when you're there, it's not constantly talking about the case. It's about, we talk about parenting, we talk about the projects that she's working on, we talk about, the human side of things. I mean, I was making jam, and she was looking back at how she used to make jam. Little things like that. It's a very human relationship.
So, what kind of situation is Lindsay in day to day? Then, how does she spend her days?
Well, in Karabakan, the women are segregated from the men because the prison was actually never made for women. So sadly, the area that the women are in, which is called W Block, doesn't have any. They're locked in there all day unless they go out for a visit or unless they go to one of the projects, either the art room or to learn computers, those things were initiated by Andrew Chan and Myron Sukumaran, or that they go to one of the religious services. Otherwise, they're in the W Block all the time, and so it is very cramped, although they have moved quite a few people out. But with Lindsay's influence, they've started to make some small amendments. She's been teaching them to knit and to sew, and so you can see some small improvements in the area.
And what about her health then?
Well, the difficult thing is that there is actually no budget for their health. In fact, the Indonesians, there is a budget of 5,000 rupiah, which is the equivalent of 50 cents Australian per year. So there is nothing. But there is actually, the health care in Indonesia in the prisons is little to nothing. Because you've got to understand, it's not just inside the prisons. Outside of the prisons, people find it hard to get health care as well. So it's actually quite distressing. They get minor ailments which become quite major, and ultimately things that we would, people end up getting teeth extracted, whereas in our country they would be filled, etc. So there's no dental facilities, and prisoners have to be very, very ill before they get taken out for a hospital visit. They almost have to be dying. One of the guys that I worked with, he had a stroke, and it took over 2 weeks to campaign to get him out to have a hospital visit.
So Lindsay, you would say, is in quite good physical health?
She has health issues, and she's trying to do the best that she can with it, because really there's not a lot of point in complaining, because there's not a lot that can be done.
What about her mental health?
Well, anyone that's incarcerated and faced with the death penalty is going to have to deal with, anxiety, stress. But the biggest stress for Lindsay is the fact that whilst the British government, obviously, there is no death penalty in Britain, but unlike other countries where there is no death penalty, the British government have refused point blank to help secure a competent Indonesian lawyer that can prepare what is known as a PK. And this is exceptionally distressing to her and to her family. And to be honest with you, it is very, very hard in the abolitionist field. We can't really understand why a judicial review, which would have cost millions of pounds, decided that she was an extraordinary case and should be funded, and yet the foreign minister decided for his own reasons that would not happen, and that is very distressing and very confusing.
You were present at the execution of what's become known as the Bali Nine.
Yes.
Some of those were, I believe, good friends with Lindsay Sandiford, and I imagine that the deaths, particularly of Andrew Chan and Myron Sukumaran, had an effect on Lindsay Sandiford in that way.
Absolutely. There is a camaraderie among all on death row, and I have been back there since the executions, and there is a loss there of two great leaders and two great mentors. And Lindsay is trying to, work with one of the other Bali Nine guys, Matthew Norman, to facilitate and to keep alive the legacies that those men have left there. By way of, helping with the hygiene packs and with new people coming in, etc., etc. But the psychological impact of the brutal murder of two reformed men is incredibly distressing. Lindsay is there at the moment, and she's the only one facing the death penalty, so she's there alone, without any internal support. And
when you say alone, you mean mentally alone, not physically alone?
There is not another person inside Corobacan that is currently facing the death penalty. Both Andrew and Myuran said to me that they wanted me to, in fact, it's a bit of a joke between Myuran and myself. He said, I chose you because I know you will speak out. You're not afraid to speak out, and you must help Lindsay. They, were very concerned for her because she is older, she's a grandmother, and, the situation with her is just so unjust. Everything that could have gone wrong with her trial has gone wrong, and she just wants a fair trial. That's all she's asking for.
What kind of contact does Lindsay have with the outside world? I know family members did go and visit recently, and she met her newest granddaughter for the first time. But
Yes.
I mean, what kind of contact does she have with them?
They can write to each other, and there is an official telephone in the jail that they can make use of from time to time. So there's definite contact with the family, but clearly it's incredibly distressing for them. However, seeing her grandchild was just an absolute highlight, and seeing her so full of joy and energy, like a little 2-year-old always is. We talked a lot about it, that she would, live in the moment, she would savor it, and rather than think about what would happen when they went, rather enjoy every single moment. And that's one of the things you learn from people whose lives are in the balance. You learn how to live in the moment.
So what does she want to say then to David Cameron? If she was given the opportunity to speak, what would she want to say to the Prime Minister? Well,
the bottom line is that legalised murder is still murder. And by not providing her with a fair and competent defence, that basically they, even though the British government does not agree with the death penalty, they have, in fact, signed her death warrant. And what absolutely brings total confusion to the world of our world of the abolition of the death penalty is that a judicial review held in the UK determined that Lindsay's case was an extraordinary case and that should actually have the funding. So for whatever reason, the Foreign Minister decided that he would not grant that to her. And this is incredibly distressing to her and to those that are watching this process unwind.
So does Lindsay still have hope then? Does she still believe there is a chance she could avoid the death penalty?
Well, I think where there is life, there is always hope. And Lindsay is, she's quite incredible because she is believing that people will see sense. She is believing that, we've had such a response on lindsaysandiford.org. Overnight, we ended up with 3,000 people signing the petition. People had given 10,000 Australian dollars. And so people are realizing, hey, look, she did something, she did do it, but there was a reason behind it. Does she deserve to be punished for her bad choices? Yes. Does she deserve to die? No. And so people are saying, listen, this person needs some support. If this was my child, my mother, my aunt, my daughter, what would I want? In 2015, it beggars belief that at least Britain wouldn't intervene and provide her with at least a chance. Her case has never been handled properly and thoroughly, and she feels confident that if the right evidence was in place, if the right people were in place, if the right experts were in place, that she would stand. Even one of the judges on her case, the prosecutor, recommended 15 years. Let's just strip it all back for one moment and think She did everything cooperating with the Indonesian authorities. She handed over the names of those higher up than her. She cooperated, and yet they get 6 years and 18 months, and she gets the death penalty. Surely there is something in people that can see that there is a huge disparity there.